Here is where we gather in the presence of the sacred. Here is where we gather to experience the holy. Here is where together we face the unanswerable questions and we acknowledge that the not knowing is as sublime as it is frustrating. Here is where we unite in the midst of life and all the glories and the suffering it can hold, knowing that both are ever present. Here is where we can ask, think, risk, explore, ponder, and offer what might not be welcomed or even acceptable somewhere else. Here is where, if we allow it, we are deeply moved. Here is where we may encounter each other in deep and powerful ways that surprise us, yet without which perhaps we might not make it through. Here we gather to worship, to experience something happening, perhaps something different for each of us according to our beliefs, something unnamed, uncategorized, unusual, and yet absolutely necessary. Here we are so gathered, our minds, our hearts, and our souls. With these words from Patricia Sheldon, welcome all who have gathered this morning for our Sunday service. Welcome to those of you who are here in person at Essex Church. Welcome to everyone who's joining us via Zoom from far and wide, and indeed watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast stream at a later date. Do get in touch, reach out to let us know you're there. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jane Blackall and I am minister with Kensington Unitarians. In our service this morning, we'll be exploring the theme of the sacred. Although it's a word we use a lot, it turns out that this is a surprisingly slippery concept, perhaps more so than I realised when I picked the service theme. And it's something that's extremely personal to each individual too, I reckon. I reached out to a number of congregation members this week to get a range of perspectives, and hopefully you'll find that they're subtly woven into the rest of the service. And I'm delighted that Lochlann Binney was so particularly energised by this topic that they'll be offering their own reflections on the topic later on. But first, to set the tone, I want to offer a quote from Anthony Lawler. These words are on the front of the order of service if you're in the building, and they're on the website along with the text of the whole service if you're online. He said, "The sacred cannot be precisely defined. Each of us perceives it through the lens of a unique personal history. For me, sacredness is an experience of the inner radiance of life, the unseen force that transforms and nourishes the physical world, but is never limited by it. There is something more to it, a mystery that is never totally grasped." So let's do our own sacred ritual. We'll light our chalice flame as we do each time we gather. It's a little moment for us to stop and pause, to gather and centre ourselves, to lay down anything we don't need to be worrying about for the next hour or so. It's a ritual that connects us with Unitarians and Unitarian universalists the world over, and it reminds us of that proudly progressive religious tradition of which this gathering is part. The lighting of this chalice calls us to attention as we focus on its flickering light for a moment. Let us recall the shared intention that it represents, to co-create a safe and sacred space for prayer and sharing in which we can reconnect with life's depths and our very highest aspirations. A gathering of solidarity and trust to nurture and strengthen us for all the days of our lives. Let us sing together now. Our first hymn this morning is on your green hymn sheet, "Gather Us In." This hymn celebrates the ways in which the sacred is encountered in all world faiths and more. For those joining via Zoom, the words will be up on your screen. Feel free to stand or sit as you prefer, and let's sing up as best we can, "Gather Us In." So let's take all of our joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken, into an extended time of prayer and reflection now. This is based on some words by Laura Dobson. You might want to adjust your position to get more comfortable. You might want to put down anything you don't need to be holding. Perhaps there's a posture that helps you to feel more prayerful and centred. Whatever helps you to get into the right state of body and mind for us to be fully present in this sacred time and space, present to ourselves, to each other, and to that which lies within us and beyond us. Spirit of life, God of all love, in whom we live and move and have our being, we turn our full attention to you, the light within and without, as we tune into the depths of this life and the greater wisdom to which and through which we are all intimately connected. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and the stillness at the very centre of our being. Ground of all being, our Mother and Father, who are throughout the whole cosmos. Holy are all your names, and holy are we, whoever and however we are. Your realm of love and justice come through the actions of our hands and the desires of our hearts. Open our hearts to those who live at the edges and in the shadows. Let us extend our hearts to welcome all in love and practice compassion towards every being. Give us what will nourish us today. Let us be grateful for everything we have. Forgive us when we miss the mark, as we forgive those who cross our boundaries. Give us the strength to be honest with ourselves. In trying times, guide us on the right paths as we learn to trust our own inner wisdom. And in times of joy and sorrow alike, may we keep turning toward the light of love. For you are the source of all that has been, is now, and will be. Let us honour your indwelling presence forevermore. In our company this morning and every time we gather in community, there will be those whose hearts are broken open by the world's sufferings, by loss and grief, loneliness and rejection, disappointment and meaninglessness, and by all those horrors and injustices of this world that we witness with anguish and frustration. So let's take a few moments to direct our prayers of loving kindness for all those who suffer this day. In our company this morning and every time we gather in community, there will be those whose hearts are full and overflowing, despite everything, buoyed up by the beauty of nature and culture, comforted and uplifted by family and friends, aware of life's many possibilities, and in touch with a sense of hope and encouragement. So let's spend a little longer directing our prayers of gratitude for all that is still good in our lives. in our company this morning, and every time we gather in community, there will be those who are simply keeping on as best they can. Their hearts a blessed, messy blend of all life's mixed emotions, seeking to discern the next step, the way forward, in an often complex and confusing world. So let's spend a few more quiet moments asking for what we most need to face all of life's ups and downs. Spirit of life, God of all love, as this time of prayer draws to a close, we offer up our joys and our concerns, our hopes and our fears, our beauty and our brokenness, and we call on you for insight, healing and renewal. As we look forward now to the coming week, help us to live well each day and be our best selves, using our unique gifts in the service of love, justice and peace. Amen. Time to sing again now. Our second hymn is in your purple hymn books, number 208. It's an old favourite, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Hymn number 208.
These are excerpts from the Unitarian Universalist views of the sacred. Perspectives on the sacred seem to be so particular to the individual. Therefore, it seems important for us to gather insights from a number of different voices. We're going to share 6 brief excerpts from a pamphlet on Unitarian Universalist views of the sacred, which suggest varied ways of looking at this mysterious topic.
This is what Paul Racer has to say. Sacredness is a quality we attribute to a dimension of our lives we perceive as worthy of the highest respect and reverence. The sacred draws us out of ourselves. It is a vehicle through which we may experience ourselves in deeper relation with the divine. To hold something sacred is to name it as holy. It is a dimension of experience that opens us up to deeper connectedness that is always present.
Patrick O'Neill, former minister at Roslyn Hill, said, "There is something innate to human nature, something basic to our civilized sensibility that recognizes certain distinctions of worth in reality. And the name we have traditionally given to the highest of these is the holy or the sacred. Even if no divinity exists, the relationship of all living things, each to one another, each to the other, and to the world which sustains us, is sacred. Whatever violates that relation violates the sacred. Whatever nourishes that relation increases it."
Abhi Janamachi has said, "The sacred is present and available to us whenever we look or are willing to find it." The sacred and the secular are two aspects of the same reality. God speaks to us all the time in that still, small voice. But because it is not the timbre we are expecting, we habitually ignore it. Our wholehearted attention to every gesture, every thought, every action sanctifies them. If we remain open and expectant, watching out of the corners of our eyes, keeping our ears cocked, putting away all preconceived ideas, our lives will emanate the sacred.
Judith Meyer said, "Attitudes about the sacred are not entirely private. There is always a social aspect to them. It is not enough to care only about what I hold to be sacred. To enter the realm of the sacred is to experience a sensibility that humankind has protected and cultivated for thousands of years. We all possess the instinct to set aside something as sacred, to cherish it, and to protect it with our whole selves. We must make room in our world for others to do the same, even when we do not agree. The sacred is something we share, a bond that is varied in its expression, but fundamental to our humanity."
James Ishmael Ford quotes the mystic Meister Eckhart's words, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love." Ford continues, "Our senses perceive the parts of the world. If this particular knowing is simultaneously informed by a great sense of unity, it opens up the possibility of divine knowing, of the sacred. This particular knowing, and acting from this knowing, is our great calling."
And Victoria Safford said, "When I was 9 or 10, I found a dead deer in the woods. I saw the flies feeding on her open eyes and felt the silky roughness of her coat, forgetting all those warnings to never, ever touch a dead animal, not even with a stick. A child is made for wonder, not for hygiene. I pressed my living hand against the stiff carcass, smelled the black blood, lifted up the heavy hooves. I thought about death and how deer run, how they stand among spring trees, glance up, and disappear. That afternoon, I learned as much about the sacred as I did in all my later classes in theology. When I say sacred, I mean the architecture of this radiant creation and whatever it reveals to us of beauty, truth, and love. It is the common holy mystery of life and death. We are part of the cosmos, fragments of its holiness. In our relation to the whole, expressed as reverence, joy, gratitude, prayer, and among us as compassion, the sacred is manifest. It is the larger love which transcends all of our understanding.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Roy. So we're moving into a time of meditation now. To take us into the stillness, I'm going to share a short poem titled The Sacred by Stephen Dunn. It's on your hymn sheet if you want to look at it later, also on the website. And this poem is a vignette that describes a sacred place, a sacred moment created in the middle of the apparently ordinary. I want to suggest this might prompt you to reflect on your own sacred moments and how you understand the sacred. What does it feel like to encounter the sacred in the midst of ordinary life? The poem will take us into a few minutes of shared silence, which will end with the sound of a bell, and then we're going to hear some more music for meditation from Holly and George. So again, let's do what we need to do to get comfortable. You might want to get your feet flat on the floor if that helps you to ground and steady yourself. You might want to close your eyes, and the words are just an offering. Feel free to use this time to meditate in your own way. The Sacred by Stephen Dunn. After the teacher asked if anyone had a sacred place, and the students fidgeted and shrunk in their chairs, the most serious of them all said it was his car, being in it alone, his tape deck playing things he'd chosen. And others knew the truth had been spoken and began speaking about their rooms, their hiding places. But the car kept coming up, the car in motion, music filling it, and sometimes one other person who understood the bright altar of the dashboard and how far away a car could take him from the need to speak or to answer. The key in having a key and putting it in and going.
What does the sacred mean to you? I have a few answers for what I've found or made sacred, some big, some small, and some objects I'll show you a little later on. What pulls them together is a kind of close attention, not necessarily a godly capital P presence, just being present. Paying deep attention makes something holy. If a tree blooms in a wood and no one pays attention, it's definitely beautiful, but I'm not sure it's still sacred. But what is it that's sacred? An object, a moment, a memory, a place? At Heart and Soul, Jane encourages us to bring a candle or some other sacred object. And people bring all sorts. Stuffed animals are popular, but people bring stones, cups, toys. Any of these can be sacred if we imbue them with the meaning and then use them to remind us of that meaning. At the moment, I'm setting up a pagan altar in my new flat, a space to keep sacred objects. I have a green leaf-shaped plant pot that a friend brought with a succulent in as a housewarming gift, which will become sacred when I set it on the shelf to represent Earth, the North, the Tarot suit of Pentacles. Haven't yet found the other three elements, directions, and suits yet, but I will. I also have a fertility talisman made by a friend who briefly ran a business making Celtic charms. It represents Brigid and the feminine, so I'm also looking for a balancing masculine object. This week, I bought a little shelf on Facebook Marketplace, which will at some point become this altar once I paint it or stain it and hang it up. But I'm letting what it'll look like and what I'll fill it with emerge slowly and in its own time. Paying attention to what appears in front of me, being discerning. The slowness of this feels sacred too, like I'm listening for what's right and not trying to force it. The reason I want these objects is to create sacred moments. The objects aren't essential, of course. I find sacred moments in a breath of sweet spring air, or a tarot card that chimes with what's on my heart, or the traffic lights turning green as I approach, or a moment of silence between friends, or the hush of a church. Serendipity and quiet seem to link these things, as well as that slowing down or pause. Maybe it requires an internal quiet and a real break from everyday life in order for us to pay the right kind of attention. I've been trying to let in more sacred moments lately, more moments where, if you're that way inclined, you might think, yes, God is here. Or you might feel briefly connected to a deep truth you can hold on to. Truth itself is something I have increasingly held sacred in recent years. I realised that while I've always valued truth in an outward-looking way, I hadn't been listening, slowing down and paying real unprejudiced attention to the internal. What does my body need right now? What do I want to do next? This shift towards listening to myself more deeply has come out in big ways and small ones. The big things like changing my name have come from this process. I listened for the name that felt right and trusted that knowing when it came. This change is sacred. Equally, I have a tiny moment of sacred attention every time I choose what colour straw I want to put in my water glass. It's a frivolous small thing, but every time I open the cupboard, I make myself slow down, pause, tune in, open to what might be, really accept that it could be anything. Maybe I don't want a straw at all. And then notice what's truly there and act on it. As small as this moment of choosing is, making it a regular practice is, I think, part of what has allowed me to use this sacred attention in bigger and more impactful ways. This practice of making sacred by paying detailed, open attention to what's true, it feels a lot like conscience. I'm thinking a lot about the history of dissent and resistance right now. People who've refused to be swept up in what was going on around them before pausing, letting themselves consider what is really right, or even just really right for them, and then acting on that understanding, even if they were the only one, even if it brought them trouble. I think we'd have a better world if we all created more sacred moments, helped by objects or not. More moments to pause and listen. I think we need to let these sacred moments of attention shine through the canopy of daily routine and listen to where our hearts and our conscience really want to go and follow them.
Thanks, Lochlann. When I first started thinking about this theme as something we might want to explore in a service, I brought it up in conversation with a few friends, some of whom are religious types and others of whom are really not. At first I was somewhat surprised to find that people seem to struggle somewhat with this concept. What precisely does it mean, the sacred? But then as I tried to share my own sense of the sacred in return, I realised quite what a slippery idea it is. Maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, given that we often talk of sacred things as being ineffable, somehow beyond our human ability to express in words too profound to speak of. Still, we try to find a way. I try not to do this too often, but I think this is one of those occasions when checking the dictionary definitions is not a bad place to start. So here we go. Sacred, adjective, connected with God or dedicated to a religious purpose and so deserving veneration. Religious rather than secular, regarded with great respect and reverence by a particular religion, group or individual, regarded as too valuable to be interfered with, sacrosanct. That's what the dictionary says. And it's a close neighbour, of course, of holy, which is defined as something that's dedicated or consecrated to God or a religious purpose, morally and spiritually excellent, pure and good, sacred. I don't know if you've noticed, but when you Google a word, as well as giving you the definition, it often shows a little graph that indicates how the usage of that word, in the sense of how often it is used in published works, how that changes over time. The use of sacred has slumped since a high in the early 1800s, hitting a low around 1980, and picking up just a little bit in recent years. It does seem that the sacred is a concept that not so many people have that natural connection with anymore. But I reached out to more people, some in the congregation, some in the wider church, some without any particular religious or spiritual leanings at all, to ask what the sacred means to them. And I asked it knowing now that it's not an easy question to answer. A few of us were just stumped, but the sheer range of things that came up in response by others was quite noteworthy. Someone spoke of their sense that the sacred infuses all things, but acknowledged that this sense of the sacred isn't always easy to stay in touch with day to day, so it's something that they try to actively and consciously reconnect with. Others spoke of sacred objects which hold significant memories of special times wrapped up with strong emotion or poignancy. Some spoke of the sacred memories of loved ones who have died and the places or traditions that are associated with them, or possessions which almost become sacred relics. Others recalled experiences of intimacy and deep connection which were too precious to speak of. Some recounted precious but fleeting encounters with wild animals, dazzling flowers, awe-inspiring natural landscapes. And still more spoke of the sacred power of unique and original works of art or music, particularly the collective and deeply connecting experience of collectively experiencing those moments of beauty together. Someone described a feeling of beauty and hope that wells up when singing inspiring hymns, and there was even a suggestion that some ideas and values are held sacred because we collectively agree that they're important at the level of society. The example they offered was democracy, something that was sacred. There can be a great power in shared experiences of the sacred when a community gathers around their sacred text or tradition or ritual, not something we get to do so much of as Unitarians perhaps, as in other religious traditions. But this happens in non-religious contexts too. I couldn't help thinking of Liverpool football fans singing "You'll Never Walk Alone." That gives me chills even though it's not my team. And possibly something similarly meaningful emerges among the devotees at a Taylor Swift concert, because I know that her work means a lot to a lot of people. I'm guessing at least some of these perspectives will resonate with each of you, and perhaps they'll have prompted your own thoughts and feelings about different things that you nonetheless find sacred. Each of us is likely to have our own unique and particular focus at the centre of our private holy of holies. In a sense, the quality of being sacred is a property that we as individuals or collectively can choose to endow things with. When I say thing, of course, I don't just mean material objects, but also activities, experiences, memories, places, ideas, and all the other stuff we just mentioned. We can choose to regard a thing with great respect and reverence, to elevate its meaning, to make it sacred. It is special to us to an extra degree, and for those of us who are so inclined, in a way that might connect us to God. A phrase that came to mind a lot when pondering this topic was, "Is nothing sacred?" That phrase tends to be said when something we previously considered to be sacred has somehow been desecrated. Something we thought was accepted beyond question as precious and inviolable has been slighted or dismissed. I suspect a few of us will have had this thought a couple of weeks ago when the news broke of police bursting into the Quaker Westminster meeting house, breaking open the doors, arresting people who were meeting to talk about climate action and peace in Gaza. Paul Parker, the recording clerk for Quakers in Britain, described the raid as an aggressive violation of our place of worship. Such actions might offend our sense of the sacred on several levels. If we have a sense of places of worship as sanctuaries, protected and protective spaces, then it is shocking to see that boundary trashed and to realise that these sacred spaces are no longer recognised and honoured. But more fundamentally, we might see the rights to assemble and to protest as being sacred in themselves, or indeed many of the other basic human rights that are being sadly dismissed and discarded worldwide. There's a natural human inclination to want to protect those things that are sacred to us. Often we even might instinctively hide them away, and we can be very cautious about who we share them with, rightly. These things that are so precious to us need to be handled with care. I particularly wanted to raise this idea of being sensitive to other people's sacred stuff, given what we've already said about how each of us have quite different idiosyncratic senses of the sacred, such different and unexpected things in our holy of holies. We need to be really careful to honour the precious stuff that means so much to others in ways that we might not fully appreciate or understand. It's easy enough, if we're a basically decent person, to know it's not okay to be disrespectful about someone else's religious tradition or practice insofar as it's not harming anybody else. That is something that, on the whole, we collectively acknowledge is off limits. But say someone shares with us about a personal sacred thing, something that's very close to their heart, but which doesn't hold the same special meaning for us. We might not even realise that we're on holy ground. There's a risk of being irreverent or flippant or even rude about the thing that they hold sacred and causing hurt. And I would hope that most of us wouldn't want to do that. We'd want to show respect. On this matter, in recent years, I've picked up the excellent phrase, "Don't yuck somebody else's yum." I think that's a good rule for life. I've got two tiny examples of this sort of thing in everyday exchanges. Now, they might seem trivial, but they're both occasions where a certain casual carelessness crept in and unnecessarily hurt someone. Some time ago, a friend told me that they'd just started a new job in an open-plan office space, and they'd brought just one personally significant item to keep on their desk, to keep up morale. It was a sacred object of sorts in a modest way. And their boss came in and took the mickey out of this item. They needn't have said anything about it at all. If they'd approached the item with curiosity rather than disdain, it could actually have been an opportunity for sharing and connection, but instead it brought about hurt and set a distance between them. It seems small, but it really meant something to that person. Another example is my own. For me, certain music is so sacred, so connected with my inner life, my sense of meaning, or personally significant experiences in my past, that I can't bear to listen to certain records when other people are around, for fear of some kind of intrusion on that tender and profound experience. I think that's why I picked that poem for our meditation today, the young man whose sacred space was listening to his tapes in the car at night. It really spoke to me, or at least my 18-year-old self. I remember a time when I shared some piece of music on social media saying how much I loved it and how much it meant to me, and someone rushed to comment underneath, "It's forgettable. She yucked my yum." Except to use that phrase kind of makes light of something that did genuinely hurt in the moment. Those things that are sacred to us are somehow part of us, so no wonder we're going to be sensitive about them sometimes. It's just a reminder to be a little more careful in how we receive and handle other people's sacred things. I sometimes say in our services that this is a space we make sacred with our presence and intention. And I think this connects with what Lochlann was saying about attention. We can intentionally imbue things with this sense of the sacred. We can cultivate an attitude of reverence. We can commit to the belief that things matter, that they have value, that they are deserving of our profound attention and care. And perhaps this is a quality that is somewhat lacking in the world at this moment in our history. Maybe if we were all more tuned in to the sacred in all things, we might be a bit less collectively destructive as a species. So in the coming days, I encourage you to turn your attention to the sacred. Open your awareness to those moments in which you can connect with God or with your highest good or deepest truth or most profound sense of meaning. Seek those sacred moments. Train yourself to spot them, and maybe you can take them as little cosmic nudges, reminders of what really matters most in life, moments to realign yourself with your own personal North Star and to live your best life now. I'm going to close this reflection with just some brief prayerful words based on the words of Tamara Libak. We've gathered to be reminded of the sacred in the ordinary, the holy moments of waking again to a new day, the feel of the precious earth beneath our feet, the crisp, cool sensation of the air on our skin, the joy of being welcomed by our fellow travellers, and the warmth of this special place where we meet. So help us this day to be fully present in our living, awake to each and every breath. Remind us that life is taking place in the in-between as well as in our lofty goals. Remind us that the details and the detours craft the path and make it our very own. And help us to remember that though we did not make this glorious day, we have the freedom to greet each sacred moment as it unfolds. Amen. Time for one last hymn. Due to a clerical error, we don't have the words on the hymn sheet like I intended. So if you're in the room, it would be a good idea if you can move to somewhere where you can see the screen and read the words off there. It's The Church Where Love Lives. We sing this one quite a lot, so maybe you'll remember some of the words, but do your best, and let's sing up. Always love it. Just a few announcements then. Thanks to Janine for tech hosting, for Charlotte for co-hosting online. Thanks to Lochlann for offering their own personal reflections on the theme. Thanks to Julia and to Roy for reading. And thanks to Holly and George for the lovely music and Benj for supporting our singing as ever. Thanks to Hannah for greeting and Julia for doing the coffee. If you're here in person, do stay around for a chat. We like to get to know you. And we've got pear and ginger cake today as a motivating factor to stay for tea. If you want to do yoga with Hannah at 12:30, come back here into the church. If you've not done it with her before, you've got a little form to fill in about medical conditions and the like, but I don't think she's going to work you too hard. Tonight and Friday at 7, we've got our Heart and Soul online contemplative spiritual gathering. This week we're considering unfinished business. Email me if you want to join for that. Email Rita if you want to join for Friday, because I'll be away at the annual meetings. Hopefully we'll have community singing this Wednesday evening. Let me know if you're planning to come to that in case there's any last-minute cancellations. We're not far from Easter. On the 20th of April, we'll have the Easter service with the Quartet of Singers, and we'll have a congregational lunch after that service. So let Liz know what you're going to bring food and drink-wise if you're going to come to the lunch. We've got a membership service on the 27th, so if you haven't yet filled in your membership form, please do that. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll send it to you again. This month's Better World Book Club is on The Life Inside by Andy West. It's about teaching philosophy in prisons. That meeting will be on the 27th on Zoom. I do have one last copy that was given back to lend out if you want to borrow it. Next Sunday, Patricia will be leading our service on the theme of borders, so do come along and support Patricia. And Heidi and Roy have got an art exhibition coming up this week. The private view is on Wednesday from 6 to 8 o'clock. I think there are still flyers knocking about, but have a chat with Heidi and Roy and find out more. It is on throughout the week, but that's the main event. I don't know if either of you want to say anything, or will that do for now? Great. Well, encourage you to go to that. All the activities are on the back of the order of service. They're in the Friday email. Do sign up for the Friday mailing list if you're not already on it. The congregation has very much got a life beyond Sunday mornings. We encourage you to keep in touch, look out for each other as best you can, and nurture those supportive connections. Just time for our closing words and closing music then. May the love that gives to life its beauty, the reverence that gives to life its sacredness, and the purposes that give to life its deep significance be strong within each of us and lead us into ever-deepening relationships with all of life. And may that be so for the greater good of all. Amen.